There are many situations in UNHCR in which we try to make sure that people under our mandate are protected. This also requires persuasion. Take these situations for instance. Advocacy is a powerful tool that can help. But what is advocacy? Let's look at it in more detail. Advocacy is a process that involves analysis, planning, action, and reflection aimed at influencing legislation, policies, and practices, including resource allocation decisions within political, economic, and social systems and/or institutions. How can this process be broken down? It has three main steps. 1. Planning. 2. Achieving influence. And 3. Demonstrating change. Let us look at the first step, planning. It can be further broken down into processes as follows. First, analyze the problem and its causes. Then, identify desired changes. Set priorities. Then, examine power relations and identify a theory of change. Next, define advocacy outcomes. Identify targets and audiences. Finally, develop your advocacy approach. The second step of the advocacy process is achieving influence. These two, like planning, can be broken down into processes. First, a narrative has to be developed. Then, key messages are defined. Tactics and activities are determined. Next, decision makers are engaged. Decide who to collaborate with and find ways to engage with persons of concern for advocacy as much as possible. The third big step is demonstrating change, and it also has two subparts. 1. Gathering evidence to support advocacy, and 2. Monitoring and evaluating advocacy. For example, think of protection at sea. Volcania allowed persons rescued at sea to disembark in its ports, but no longer does so because of the rising numbers. UNHCR analyzes whether the country of departure could be considered a place of safety for persons rescued at sea if they disembark there. The goal is to influence the decision makers to change the government's policy regarding refoulement. The audiences are probably the Ministry of Interior, the leaders of the Coast Guard, and allies can be NGOs, the public. The narrative is to protect lives at sea and prevent refoulement, and the tactics is developed on that narrative, showing the public loss of life at sea. Over time, the impact of the change in a government policy, for example, has to be observed. What can we at UNHCR use for effective advocacy? Well, for example, the people we represent, that is, persons of concern, and also the international community. We can also use our presence in the field and the data and expertise we accumulated, and our history and experience of over 70 years working across all types of situations. Let's work together to promote and use advocacy for the benefit of our persons of concern. Enjoy your learning journey.